And without further ado, look at that, just instantly. Thank
oh
you.
My God. I think I was a little aggressive with this.
Oh, let's just hammer the button, Talar. Hammer it. So I won't have any segue here. I'm pleased to introduce Talar Malakian, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Phonexa. I will let you introduce your company and what you do. So please give our audience a little bit of insight into your role and what Phonexa does, enterprise grade tracking, etc. I'm going to jump off the stage, and I'll be back for some Q&A after you share your plays for gathering target market insights.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Hey, everybody. I'm CMO of Phonexa. I joined as VP of Marketing last year, and a few months in, I was, able to take that next step, which was surprising to me. I think I asked the question, "Are you sure?" when they asked me to step up. But Phonexa is an end-to-end software built for consumer performance marketing and affiliate marketing teams. So we help consumer companies that, on the enterprise side at least, that are driving a high volume of consumer traffic. It's really helping them track their affiliate marketing and performance marketing efforts in one place, allowing them essentially to see their affiliate traffic alongside the different ways that their consumers are actually reaching out to them. So helping them track their leads, their calls, their transactions, and their traffic from affiliates alongside sort of all of their other inbound marketing sources. So I think I'll tell you about the challenge, I think mainly because today's conversation for me is really, what do you do when you need to be scrappy? So in the prior talk, they were kind of talking about scrappiness towards the end. And for me, it was coming into an environment where we actually didn't have ICPs that were updated. And some of you might find this when you walk into a new role. You're coming into a new role and everybody kind of thinks that they know, right, what the priorities are, especially across departments and cross-functionally. So they assume they have the right understanding of the ICP and they have a very shared understanding. But when I walked in, I felt that that was actually one of the biggest first gaps. Our ICP decks were collecting dust. They weren't very actionable. And so the first task was really, let's go ahead and develop this so that we can actually then take the next step, build our strategic narrative for our brand, and then break that down into positioning and messaging per segment, per ICP. When you're a startup and you're scaling and you have a lean team, you don't have all the time in the world to get ramped up, right? To spend time learning. You have to get the fundamentals right quickly. And then you also kind of have to get scrappy. So this is the talk on what are the 3 things that I did when I became CMO that was getting to the point where we had our first version of our ICP decks and actionably kind of building that out. So a lot of what you're doing when you're building ICPs is you're kind of looking for a few categories. For us, that was firmographic, psychographic, technographic, and demographic data. Lots of graphics in there, but those are like the components that you're essentially trying to cover alongside what is the buyer journey for each of these segments and these ICPs, and then what are the messaging pillars that help them through that buyer's journey and help them through the phase where they are problem unaware, and then they're problem aware, and then they start becoming solution aware. I kind of think of the buyer's journey in that way, less so in kind of the rigid stages that we prescribe with like vernacular on marketing teams that sort of changes over time at, MQL, SQL, all those are vernacular changes, I think, that are unimportant in the conversation when you're building ICPs, because I really think about them as the stage at which someone is unaware of the problem they have, when you start generating enough demand where they recognize they have this problem, sometimes when they didn't think they knew they had this problem, and then recognizing that you're a solution to that problem alongside all the other competitors, and then actually getting them to engage meaningfully in the sales process. So the first thing that I did was analyzing the existing data that we had. So I think the main way to do that was, it was kind of tactical. It was taking HubSpot lists that we had and our customer data segments that lived in Plan Hat. A lot of our customer data lived in Plan Hat, and we essentially exported those lists. And there was one primary list that I looked at, which was our existing customer list. The things that I wanted to understand in terms of pools, correlations, and clusters were essentially industry. The reason I wanted to look at industry as the first one was because our go-to market was industry focused initially. So it was, let's go get insurance carriers, let's go talk to home services companies. And essentially what we were following was behavior and use case when we were going after industry. I actually initially, when I came in, felt that that might not be the right path forward based off the fact that the actual affiliate marketing journey involves 3 different business types, not necessarily, it's not really industry driven. It's companies that do affiliate marketing, and then and then entities who are affiliate marketers, and then networks who actually connect affiliates to advertisers. Those were the 3 players and the 3 business types. But yet our go-to market was kind of more focused on industry. So we rolled that back, and really I wanted to look at industry to understand what are the correlations here. Lo and behold, like, industry actually wasn't a big driver of a company wanting to engage with us. The second was the type of company. We looked at company size, geographic location, their tech stack. When I talk about tech stack, the reason we looked at that, and we already had those properties filled out in HubSpot, it was what we were trying to figure out is 2 things. Where did they switch from? And then what did we need to displace based off of the fact that our product actually had quite a few modules that did quite a few things, but we were actually not very successful in upselling and cross-selling those additional modules. So we're trying to figure out why. What are they currently using that we need to displace? The other thing was lifetime value, and understanding at the highest tier of lifetime value, what were some of the correlations, right? What was the frequency of some of these fields, and how could we essentially capitalize on those? Lastly, we were looking at the data that we had on attribution, which at that time was original source and latest source from HubSpot. Where did they come from? What was the latest source before they actually talked to sales? At that point, we weren't doing very much multi-touch attribution, didn't have as much data to work with. So what I was really trying to figure out is, generally speaking, how did this lead that became a customer come into our system? And then what was the point at which they started talking to sales? So that was kind of the first action that I took. It was like, where do our current, like, who are even our current customers, and how can we slice and dice this data? The second kind of, the reason actually, so going back to this, one of the biggest action items that came out of this was understanding, we subscribed to Apollo actually, who was a prior speaker, shortly after we did this exercise and we did ICP development. The reason for that is because I think one of the fastest ways to get from identifying the commonalities across these fields to actually getting a list built on that marketing and sales can agree on. At the time, we weren't really even going after the same list of accounts. We moved into more of that ABM light motion, shortly after this ICP development process. But really, Apollo was the fastest track way to make sure these parameters that we saw in the highest tier of lifetime value for our customers, that those things actually contributed to lists that sales and marketing could agree to go after together. The second kind of biggest tactic, and I think this one goes missed often when you're doing research into your customer data, is social listening data. And I think we talked about this very briefly in the prior session, but I think this was probably one of the biggest, most important pieces to creating differentiation, mainly because I think having led marketing and direct-to-consumer companies prior to my time at Phonexa, one of the things that was so important was being able to scour all the available channels at our discretion, and really being able to use that as insight that dictates not just who is talking about you and how are they talking about the space and their issues, but it's like one of the primary drivers of developing that. But in B2B, it's less common. So, and it's a little bit undervalued. So what we ended up doing is we had been sponsoring a ton of conferences and doing sort of larger sponsorships for major events in our space. And we weren't really as involved in actually the niche communities around affiliate marketing. And we also didn't know a lot of the questions that we were being asked. We had a very keyword-led blog and content creation strategy. And so through social listening tools and platforms, I prefer kind of BuzzSumo and Mention as my go-to tools that are low cost, but also are able to give us repeatable insight on trending content across channels. We actually did a few things. We were able to monitor the conversations that were happening about affiliate marketing and about affiliate tracking, right? And attribution. We're able to track mentions of ourselves. And then in addition to that, we were able to really look at sentiment, right? Of all the ways that we were mentioned across all the news sites and social, like how frequent were those mentions? So we were able to sort of use that to answer a few questions and map that to the ICP decks we were creating in terms of the buyer journey. Firstly, what were the top questions being asked? What was the most highly engaged content on affiliate marketing over week over week? What were the content formats? One interesting thing we found out was that there's a huge TikTok community on affiliate marketing, and we've been doing like B2B marketing on LinkedIn for some time. And so we actually prioritized a secondary social channel and decided we actually need to let our hair down a little bit and be able to relate to our prospects in a way where they feel like we speak the way that they speak. We connect the way that they connect with the businesses that they're building. And then also, but still have the gravitas to be able to speak to enterprise accounts about their tracking and their, and their systems. So really, this informed our buyer's journey stage questions and allowed us to see the content formats, influencers, and communities that we actually had to be a part of to create impact, as opposed to what we thought we had to be a part of. Lastly, customer phone interviews. And I know it's super old school to pick up the phone and actually call a prospect or a customer, but it's actually one of the fastest ways that I got to understanding what people say about us that we actually don't consider as part of our messaging. So initially, we had very broad language around how we helped our customers automate their marketing efforts. But in engaging with existing prospects, customers, and churned clients, so yes, I incentivized churned clients to talk to us. What we were able to do was gather firsthand insight into their challenges, goals, and their decision-making process. These questions kind of included some of the standard ones that you guys are familiar with, like how would you describe what we do? What words or phrases come to mind when you think of us? Why did you go with us versus others? What factors influence your decisions? And then on the closed loss deals, it was really understanding, right, the competitive landscape, the primary reason that the prospect cited for why they move forward with another solution. And then on the churned clients, it was really about their challenges, trying to understand what were things they just felt weren't possible, and how could we essentially categorize those reasons with the qualitative data that CS was providing to us, as well as these calls that we're doing on a regular basis. So one of the biggest takeaways on this was actually that what we said we did was a little different from how our customers described what we did. And so a lot of the more generic messaging that we had about our product on our site and a lot of the features that we talked about were not actually the things that our clients took as much value from. And so we took a lot of what they said, almost verbatim, and created a log of messaging per persona. So depending on what category of persona that person was falling into, we logged how they described what they did. And then those were actually used to fold into our sales messaging, now our website content, which we've done quite an overhaul in terms of our product pages and our persona pages, and really updating our messaging to be focused on kind of these revitalized ICPs. I think the last thing, and this is the fourth pillar, that sometimes there's distance created when everyone's in their own lane. But the most important thing I think we've done and made progress on is engaging with sales and customer success as if they're extensions of our team. And what that looks a lot like is actually listening to sales calls weekly actually listening to customer success calls weekly and documenting all that so it makes its way into the content that you end up creating, whether that's in the way of FAQs that need to be addressed, video content that can help them figure out how to get enabled on the platform, and really a lot of the objections and reasons that come up at different stages, and being able to produce that for your counterparts in the other departments, but also for people who are wondering whether you're the right fit. So yeah, we landed with ICP decks, and out of that came a lot of website messaging that we've been testing, still testing, and then also a lot of sales collateral that we just didn't have before. So it was a lot of kind of building from the ground up.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It sounds like you came in and really just blew the dust off of the marketing org and got things shipshape. We're a little bit short on time, and I want to make sure we get our next speaker in here. But Nana had a question for you in the questions box around the telephone interviews versus doing video interviews. So if you have a second to go in and answer that, I'm sure she would appreciate it. Talar, thank you so much for joining us at Wynter Games 19 and sharing some of your plays for getting, like I said, blowing that proverbial dust off your ICP decks, getting a better understanding around the marketing org there on who you're targeting, not just the, as you mentioned, the companies by industry, but also going after affiliate networks, affiliates themselves, large affiliates, et cetera. So thank you very much.
Thank you.